My. BYU drops like a rock in the college football playoff rankings, getting screwed by this selection committee, dropped below Notre Dame. It is infuriating. We'll talk about it. The good news is Texas Tech has creeped up to 6. Okay. Texas Tech at 6 in the college football playoff rankings, just released earlier tonight. Can the Red Raiders potentially climb into the top 4? Welcome in. The Big 12 is open for business. I am John Kurtz. This is Open for Business, the best Big 12 podcast on planet Earth. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate all of you who join me. We'll see if we can make this a bit of a tradition now with the rankings dropping on Tuesdays. I'll try and do this as much as I can to get an instant reaction, especially when the stakes are pretty high right now for the Big 12. And the Big 12 has been a real topic of conversation with the college football playoff rankings based on year. Utah still at 13, by the way, and Cincinnati in at 25. That will wrap up the teams in the college football playoff rankings. Let me go ahead and show you these, okay? Here's what we got. Largely unchanged there. Top 5, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Bama, Georgia. A lot of the national talking point is about Indiana staying there at 2, not having A&M move above them. Texas Tech up 2 spots, past Ole Miss. You got to love that, right? Texas Tech getting above Ole Miss, which is a bit of a punishment for Ole Miss just playing the Citadel this past week. Okay, take that. Random SEC crappy non-conference game in November. But you see BYU all the way down to number 12. And here is the problem for the Cougars right now. The problem is the 3 logos in front of them. And notice, I did not say the 3 teams in front of them. I said the 3 logos in front of them. That's the big issue here for BYU. That OU, the Longhorn, and the ND, the Notre Dame, the Fighting Rudies. That's an issue. Okay, we're going to blind resume compare BYU and Notre Dame later. And in fact, the Notre Dame stuff is ridiculous enough to me that I am even at this point standing up for Texas and Oklahoma. I don't think Notre Dame should be above Texas and Oklahoma. You know what you've got to do as a committee to make me stand up for Texas and Oklahoma and stump for them to be higher? It's got to be a pretty egregious mistake, man. Shout out to SEC Shorts this week, who just nailed how the committee views Notre Dame for some inexplicable reason here. Just rewarding teams for close losses. That is what has happened. If you are Notre Dame, if you are college football royalty, you get rewarded for coming close, but not quite. What a world we live in. Anyway, okay. Utah stays put at 13. BYU just a spot in front. I mentioned Vandy. It would have been nice if Auburn could have taken care of Vandy. That is a sneaky team to watch out for later on. Vandy still hanging out there. Miami got a big boost. Up now at 15. They're up 3 spots. I heard Reese Davis ask Mac Rhodes about it and basically call it like a course correction for Miami. Perhaps they were a bit too low last week originally there. And, Georgia Tech right there at 16. And as I mentioned, Cincinnati is still clinging to the back end of the top 25 at number 25. If you want to see what the bracket would look like right now, and I will have some inside analysis on the draw here for Texas Tech in just a little moment after we talk about BYU. But here you go. Here's what the bracket would look like if the season ended today. So you would have Texas Tech playing Miami in Lubbock. I've got a line on that game, by the way, so stay tuned if you want to hear that. Who would be favored? I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, perhaps. Texas A&M would weight the winner of Texas Tech and Miami. So that could be great, right? Who doesn't want to watch Texas Tech and Texas A&M renew that rivalry? Although it would be more fun if Texas Tech played Texas in the first round. Just missed in these rankings that incredible scenario I outlined on my Sunday live show that would have had Texas and Texas Tech playing in Lubbock. As you file in, please do like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed. I talk college football from a Big 12 perspective all the time here on this channel. Big 12 fan, great. Not a Big 12 fan, we'd still love to have you here if you want that corner of the college football world. You can fill up the chat. Please do. You can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box if you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it on tonight. I'm also on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. If you leave me a question or comment there, I will kick off the next show with it. And make sure you subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. Okay. So, man, I am frustrated for BYU in all of this, okay? Texas Tech at number 6, I think, is encouraging. BYU at number 12 is not encouraging. Utah didn't move up at all. Not surprising. And they did provide a floor for BYU. Okay, if you were thinking it was a bit ridiculous the other day that I said, hey, could BYU fall below Utah as much of a metrics darling as Utah is right now and as much love as they got from the committee in the first rankings all the way up there at 13? You can now see, at least in part, why I asked that question, right? Because BYU's butting right up against them, man. They're pretty close. They are pretty close. 5 spots, if you would have told me, like, hey, BYU is going to be at 12, they're going to fall 5 spots. They will be behind those 3 logos in Notre Dame, Texas, and Oklahoma. Are you surprised? Well, no, of course I'm not surprised. BYU is sitting in the same spot that it was in the AP poll at number 12, where it fell 4 spots this past week. None of it is surprising, okay? And especially when Texas Tech took a 7-spot tumble in the AP poll earlier this year for losing on the road with a backup quarterback by 4 points to the defending Big 12 champions. Okay, so none of it is surprising, but it is so frustrating. It is so frustrating. BYU, yes, is in the top 12, but they are not technically in the field because they would be behind the ACC champ and the Group of 5 champ who did not make the top 12 there. So you're like 2 spots. This would be BYU like next to they would not be the next team out. They would be right after that, or not the last team out, the second to last team out of the field. I don't look. You get the idea, right? Oklahoma is the last team out. BYU is right after them. So we got to have this conversation, man. I mean, I saw some grumbling about Texas and Oklahoma being in front of BYU. Obviously, all 3 of those teams, Notre Dame, Texas, and Oklahoma, have 2 losses apiece. So I get it, but Notre Dame is the one that really bothers me a lot, because now it's like the bar, the precedent has been set here for Notre Dame to be not only above BYU, but multiple spots above them. Because I'm sitting here thinking as we move forward, like, okay, BYU's schedule is continuing to be pretty tough here. They've got to play TCU and Cincinnati the next 2 weeks. They've got to go to Cincinnati. So if they win those 2 games, do they get respect? Is there a possible move up? I mean, perhaps, I guess, but probably not up 3 spots to jump Notre Dame. I wouldn't think, if Notre Dame were even just a spot in front, maybe that's a place that you could leap them. But Notre Dame's going to play Pitt this week. If they win on the road at Pitt, I assume that, Pitt's 22. That's going to just wash out the win that BYU would theoretically be picking up against Cincinnati. So there's probably not much in the way of upward mobility there. And then Texas and Oklahoma is a very interesting case because, yes, they could definitely lose and bump BYU up a spot or 2. But if that happens, well, we'll talk about it. The opponents that Texas and Oklahoma play, you are basically either rooting for one or the other. You have to root for one or the other. Texas Tech to try and get into the top 4, or the Big 12 to get 2 teams in. Because based on who's playing who, it seems impossible virtually for both of those things to happen. But let's do a little compare of resumes here between Notre Dame and BYU. With Texas and Oklahoma, I'm a little bit like, look, I mean, Texas has some really nice wins. They obviously beat Oklahoma and they beat Vandy. Those are a couple of pretty good wins. One of their losses is to Ohio State. I know Florida hasn't been very good this year, so that is a bad loss. But it's still a really talented Florida team. Like, I can understand that with the 2 wins of a high caliber, basically 2 wins of the caliber of BYU's best win, right? They're doubling up there. Like, I can understand that. And Oklahoma is virtually the same way. They've got Michigan and Tennessee. So the wins aren't quite as good, and they've lost head-to-head to Texas, so you can see why Texas is in front of them. But I can understand that case more than I can with Notre Dame. If you compare these 2, I was using ESPN's resume comparer tool earlier tonight, And if you compare the strength of schedule of Notre Dame and BYU, BYU is at 28 and Notre Dame is at 30. So I know there's been a ton of debate on Twitter over the last 24 to 48 hours about Texas Tech and Notre Dame because Joey McGuire popped off on Notre Dame in his post-game press conference, got the Irish pretty fired up, and I've seen all these shots taken at Texas Tech's strength of schedule and all that stuff. BYU, according to ESPN, has a higher strength of schedule by 2 spots than Notre Dame. BYU has 1 fewer loss, and BYU's best win is against Utah, who is number 13. Notre Dame's best win is against USC, who is number 17. Notre Dame has 2 losses as opposed to 1 loss. They have a worse strength of schedule, and their best win is not as good as BYU's. This is all about the Golden Domes, my friends. And look, I'm inclined to be a little more like, hey, I appreciate at least what the committee did with putting Utah at 13 last week and then into this week. I do not think that this is all completely egregious, but the Notre Dame stuff here is enough to drive you nuts because it's the type of thing that happens when you have human beings making all of the decisions here. So, if Greg Sankey could use some of his selective outrage about college football playoff rankings, why not use it here, Greg? They've got Notre Dame in front of Texas and Oklahoma. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So I wonder basically what the ceiling is here for BYU, if there's any at-large case or trying to pick your way up as much as you can before you would go into a Big 12 championship game, assuming that you continue winning games, which is a big assumption. I'm not TCU and Cincinnati. Don't get mad at me on that front. I'm not trying to just completely skim over that. This is under the assumption, how high could BYU go? It feels like they're a bit boxed in here. I mean, obviously, Utah should set a real floor there, assuming that BYU keeps winning. I don't think you're going to fall below Utah at 13. But outside of that, when the traffic in front of you is Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, and BYU, and they're playing teams like Georgia and Texas A&M and Alabama and LSU and Missouri left on their schedules, and then Notre Dame with the Pitt game, just feels like it's pretty crowded there. If you get enough losses, maybe. But even with those SEC games and the teams that they are playing, Texas and Oklahoma with 3 losses is going to be a really dangerous proposition. Okay, as far as Texas Tech goes, all right, so Texas Tech, as I mentioned, is up at 6. They pass Ole Miss, which is nice to see. Ole Miss, they got a bit of a kiss in the AP poll from beating the Citadel, which was asinine. But the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, chaired by Mack Rhodes of Baylor, did not do the same thing. So if you're thinking about Texas Tech, okay, they're at 6, so can they get in the top 4? Because I think this is worthy of a discussion. We obviously, those of us in Big 12 country, want to see the Big 12 become a 2-bid league. That holds certain advantages, right? There's a stigma if you're just going to be a 1-bid league every single year. There's a definite stigma that's attached to that. You'd like to see 2 teams get the bump there. But really what you ultimately need is you need teams to win playoff games. So that's a part of what it's about. If you get 2 teams in, that's an opportunity to win more playoff games. Would it be better, though, if you become known as a league that got actually one of the buys? Think about the narrative on that. If they took away the automatic buy from you, I mean, in part because Brett Yormark did give in on that, which was a bit frustrating. But he did for this year because there was so much outrage last year about how dare Boise and Arizona State get a bye. Never mind the fact that Arizona State was literally 1 play and a 4th and 13 stop away from winning that game against Texas, right? But how dare we give the Big 12 an automatic spot? Well, fine. If you say, to hell with you, we're just going to go earn it anyway in that first year, that's making a really nice statement. And if you're talking about getting to a semifinal game, that's obviously setting you up to just have to play the one game, meet the winner of perhaps let's go look at this bracket. If you were up in the 4 spot right now, you'd be looking at Georgia, something like Georgia, in a neutral site game. You go win one of those, suddenly you are in a college football playoff semifinal. I think it's at least a debate as to which you would rather have, and a part of that is because if you start looking at what you would need for Texas Tech to move up, you're going to need Bama and Georgia to lose. Okay, because like Indiana's schedule is Wisconsin and Purdue the rest of the way. I got news for you. Indiana is not losing. Ohio State, even if they lose to Michigan, Ohio State is not, they're not going to fall back behind you, right? They've been number one all year. People have been really bullish on that. They're not, the committee is not going to move them below there. Texas A&M, if they lose to Texas, I don't think Texas A&M is falling below you either. I highly doubt that. I don't know if there, maybe that and an SEC title game loss, I suppose we can begin to have some of that conversation. But I feel like you can see what's coming here, because then if A&M's losing to Texas, Texas wins, boosts its profile to get in on the back end of the playoff, which hurts BYU and Utah. So if we're looking at Bama and Georgia, that's how I zero in then on Bama and Georgia, okay, in front of Texas Tech here and what needs to happen there. Well, Bama is going to play Oklahoma, and then they're going to play at Auburn. If Auburn wants to go win that game, that would be just fine and dandy, right? But it seems like the better opportunity for a loss would be Oklahoma figuring out a way to pull that off, and then that helps Oklahoma. So it helps Texas Tech in the climb to the top 4, but then harms the attempt for 2 bids total for the Big 12. It harms your ability to get an at-large in, because Oklahoma's resume then all of a sudden is very much strengthened. Meanwhile, Georgia, okay, Georgia's got a game at Georgia Tech. Now, if they lose that, you'd definitely rather have that. You'd take that. That would help. Georgia Tech does have, I suppose, an outside shot then of, do they boost their profile enough that suddenly they could get in even with a loss in the ACC championship game? Perhaps. But I think the tougher conundrum here is Georgia playing Texas. Okay, so if Georgia loses to Texas, well, then Texas has, at that point, in essence, stamped its ticket to the playoff as far as I'm concerned, even if they go lose to Texas A&M. If Texas wins one of these last 2 games against the big boy, I think we all better be preparing ourselves for the all whites and the Texas fight song and the hook 'em and the whole deal, because they're going to be in the college football playoff. So, like, there's a chance here, if Texas Tech, obviously they need to win games. They need to win out. I don't think they're going to have a problem the rest of the regular season. Nothing against UCF and West Virginia. I don't think they're going to have a problem the rest of the regular season, winning the Big 12 championship game and see what happens. But I do feel like it's a very tough world to envision both of those things happening. And that's where I arrive at, like, which would you rather see? Which would you rather see? If you're getting one or the other, which one of those would you actually rather see? Okay. Utah at 13. Not really surprising. I would have been interested to see, had Oregon actually lost that game at Iowa, where they would have come in. I mean, I don't think they were going to fall all the way behind Utah, but how close would they be then to Utah? And that would have brought Oregon in play for a loss to Washington or a loss to USC, away from falling back behind Utah and helping Utah climb up a little bit as well. What you really need, I mean, ultimately, theme of this video has been rage against the Notre Dame machine, right? And frustration with Notre Dame. What you really need is a Notre Dame loss to Pitt this weekend. And boy, let me tell you, good old Pat Narduzzi really inspired a lot of confidence in that. Thank you, Pat. Pitt's head coach had a quote this week that was like, and that he was asked, I'll go find it on my Twitter account because it was ridiculous. I'm like, Pat, do you understand? You're not just doing this for your fan base, dog. Okay. There are a lot of people that want to see you win on Saturday for a lot of different reasons. I'm going to need you to try as hard as you possibly can to win that game. Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi on whether the Notre Dame game is a must win. Absolutely not. It is not an ACC game. I'm glad you brought that up. I'd gladly get beat 103 or 110-10 in that game. They could put up 100 on us as long as we win the next 2 after that. Excuse me, Pat? No, Pat, that is not how this works. Okay? This is not how that works. Let's address this. Notre Dame is independent. They have no reason to do otherwise. Look, That's fine. I'm not raging against Notre Dame being an independent here. I've got no issue with that. But if Notre Dame's going to be an independent and have a strength of schedule that's worse than BYU's and have a best win that's worse than BYU's and have one more loss than BYU, then I don't think Notre Dame should be in front of BYU. That seems like something pretty simple that we should all just agree on. So that's my take. I'm not somebody here like, oh, Notre Dame needs to join a conference. This is not like the Joey McGuire show. I know that's really what Joey McGuire was taking a shot at. I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to, hey, if Notre Dame wants to be independent, that's fine, but treat their resume like you would treat anybody else that's in whatever conference. Honestly, this is a pretty good Fongway with a pretty good comment here. Notre Dame keeps getting preferential treatment. Why join a conference? I mean, you're right. You're right. If this keeps happening, why join a conference in the first place? I've got a couple other takeaways. I've got a line on Texas Tech Miami, which would be the projected first round game for the Big 12 right now. But real quick, let's check in with Alan. Hello, Alan. Alan says, John, do you know the real story about the Brian Kelly firing by LSU? LSU claims he was fired with cause. What might that be? I saw some of the tweets about that today. I did not go deep diving into it, Alan. I don't know for sure, but it sounded like when all that was going down, that was like word on the street was definitely that LSU was going to try. They were going to try to get out of it without paying the full buyout. I saw that there were a couple of different offers of like 25 and 30 million, I think, of the like $54 million buyout to Brian Kelly that he refused. And so now I guess they're going to go to war over it, man. And this is, we're just in such a stupid environment in college football with all these massive coach contracts. You're going to get stuff like this because schools are going to try when the buyouts are that high. Of course, they're going to try every little thing they can to pull some kind of technicality on you to be able to fire you with cause and not have to pay out the buyout. So to be honest, I don't like being on Brian Kelly's side of really anything, but without, I guess, seeing whatever evidence LSU has put forth on this, I tend to be on Brian Kelly's side. Like, guys, if you're going to fire him with cause, you are searching for something that had he been 10-0 right now, you would never have searched for. And so, like, let's cut the crap. You're doing this to try and get out of paying him money. You signed the contract. If you want to get rid of him because of your irresponsible actions to sign this contract, just sack up and do it. Anyway, probably didn't want my whole take on that, Alan, but that is my take, my friend. Thank you for being here, Alan. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are just arriving here. Talk college football from a Big 12 perspective all year round on this channel. It is open for business. I am your host, John Kurtz. If you're on audio platforms, please rate and review. That really helps. And you can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box if you're here in the YouTube chat. And subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. To do that, it's totally free. Comes to your inbox twice a week. 5,400 plus Big 12 fans have subscribed. Okay. So Texas Tech is hosting Miami. I got to say, according to what the playoff would be today, right? I got to say, I like that draw. Let's go look at it one more time for you here. If I'm a Texas Tech fan, I'd be saying, dude, yes, bring Miami to me. Miami doesn't seem like a team that's going to be tough enough to handle a road environment as difficult as Lubbock. Like, does Miami scream tough team to you? Carson Beck has been a turnover machine. If I'm throwing him against the Texas Tech defense, yeah, give me some of that, please. I would love to watch Texas Tech's front seven just gobble him up. Carson Beck has thrown 9 interceptions already this year, by the way, for what that's worth. And as such, I am not surprised to see the fact that from Josh Pate, who has the primary sponsor of FanDuel, maybe not primary sponsor, FanDuel is a sponsor of his show. He gets these hypothetical lines from FanDuel, which I think are very helpful and informative. You can see there, FanDuel right now would have Texas Tech as a 5-point favorite at home against Miami. You got to love that. Texas Tech, a 5-point favorite at home against Miami. even with concerns about the red zone offense, which was mentioned, by the way, by Matt Rhodes, playoff committee chair earlier today. They're paying attention. They know that Texas Tech struggles in the red zone. Even with whatever concerns you might have about Baron Morton staying healthy, you've still got Vegas, well, the sports books saying that Texas Tech would be a 5-point favorite against Miami if you're playing that game in Lubbock. So I like that. I like seeing that. When is the last time? I was literally, once this popped up, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, when is the last time you saw one of these hypothetical lines for a playoff game that a Big 12 team has ever been a favorite? Like, when in the world has that ever happened? And this is why, when I talked on the show on Sunday about Texas Tech building some real brand equity here and like how much of a difference it would make for the Big 12 if there is a team that the college football public at large trusts to build a playoff caliber roster every single year, lends you a lot of credibility, helps out the conference a lot. It's because of things like this. I start to see this and I'm like, oh yeah, there you go. Like, you'll have a team there. One of the first playoff games out of the chute could actually be favored. It wouldn't be you having to play this big underdog narrative in the game. So USF Georgia minus 17.5. I'm sure we'd get a Lane Kiffin tweet complaining about that. I'm sure he'll want to get rid of the G5 team after Georgia waxes them. Oregon, Notre Dame, pretty close there. Unsurprising. And some of that is probably why you see like the extra Notre Dame love. To me, if Notre Dame's going to Autzen, I don't know, man. You're telling me on a neutral field you think Notre Dame's a better team than Oregon? I tastefully disagree on that a bit, but it is what it is. And Ole Miss and Texas, I mean, that seems about right. I don't know. I'm still having a hard time getting fully on board with like, this is the Texas that we're going to see the rest of the year, as opposed to, it's just hard to shake what we saw against Kentucky and for most of the Mississippi State game, especially what Texas's offense was for a while there. So anyway, well, that's what I got tonight, guys. That's a little quick wrap-up reaction show to the college football playoff rankings tonight. Once again, you got Texas Tech at 6, BYU at 12, Utah at 13, Cincinnati at 25 out of the Big 12. So please spread the word about Open for Business, both the show here and the newsletter, ofbnews.com, or click the link in the description of the video to subscribe to the newsletter. And rate and review on podcast platforms, like, subscribe on YouTube. I appreciate all of you guys. Hope you enjoyed this tonight, and I'll be talking to you soon. I don't think I will not be doing a show in all likelihood tomorrow. I think your typical midweek show then would be on Thursday. So stay tuned, but I will be talking to you guys very soon either way, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.